Good morning, everyone. Please, just a moment. We'll start soon. Dr. Misaki, you can unmute yourself because you are a co-host. I'm just waiting for Dr. Yola to join so that I make him a co-host.
Good morning, Prof.
No morning, problem. Sir. Yes, sir. So, okay, Dr. Yola has joined, so let me make him a co-host. I'm coming. Okay. So, let's say wait like 5 minutes to start. Dr. Misaki, so I think in the next 5 minutes, you can just start. Dr. Yola has joined already. I've made him a co-host. So you can give the rules and
okay.
Yeah.
The next 5 minutes, right?
Yes, we should start. So let me just give a background before you come in. Please, I have muted everybody. So if you have anything to say, just use the chat button. Because we want a situation where we will not be having interference here and there. So until the speaker finishes speaking, and then if you have any question, you can also use the please so that we will not be having noise here and there. Please. So anybody that is a co-host can unmute and mute himself. Others have muted everyone. I mean, Dr. Misaki, you can start. Let's start. Others will join us.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. I hope you can all hear me loud and clear. Let me show my face.
Yes, we're hearing.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. I want to welcome everybody to this program. I know there is one thing that unites everybody, or that serves as the central interest of everyone today who is on this training, and that has to do with how do we acquire knowledge? How do we refresh what we have known? Or how do we start, understanding the basics of dealing with the empirical and the methodological section of especially the thesis writing, and also in any other research activities for that matter. So as we all know, these key two segments or sections, if you may call it, they are very key when it comes to research finding. So you want to start by wanting to contribute to the body of knowledge. So the question is, how do you go about that? How do you know where the state of the knowledge is? And from there, how do you migrate into equipping yourself with the necessary tools of experimenting or exploring the issues on ground? So that comes in the area of the methodology that you're going to use. So I want to welcome every one of us this morning. And as our host has said, for us to have a very smooth section this morning, there is need for us to make sure that everything is in order. If you have any comments or any issue at all, you can always raise it. And again, those who will be coming this morning to take us through this section may not necessarily be handling it like as if we are back in the classroom, as it were, or as if we are going to start from the ground, but it's going to be based on the solution. It's going to be solution focused. So if you know at the end of the day there's still some areas you don't understand or some questions you want to ask, there will be a robust time for us to venture into the question and answer, which every one of us will also participate. So it's not going to be just the interaction between the speaker and you. It's going to be interaction among everyone of us. As I said, the idea is for us to, what we've known is to understand it, the crops are right there, those who are doing it. So it is my hope that we'll learn a lot from them, and we'll also learn from every one of us. So my name is Olusegun Mishakin. I want to welcome you once again to this morning program. So I will leave you with the presenter, but briefly, I would just want to also let us know that the idea is strictly around the overview of the ingredients of empirical and methodological literature in thesis writing, and also in research generally. So it's not going to be limited to the thesis. So I hope that at the end of the day, we'll have done a very fantastic job, so that going forward, we can all know what are the key issues when it comes to the empirical research, empirical literature, and then the methodological side of it. Thank you very much. So I don't want to waste our time. I want us to start straightforward. So, Prof, over to you, sir.
Yeah, you can introduce our speaker and then let him proceed.
Okay, great. So our speaker, I want to believe you all know him, is the one that will be handling the major part of the work today, and that's Dr. Oyinlola from the University of Ibadan. This is what he does. So you can count on him And I also believe that beyond the teaching section, the most important part of it will be the interaction. So it's going to bring in his knowledge. He has supervised so many students, so he sure knows what he's going to let us know today. And I think we'll do ourselves the best by making sure that we interact with him, and then we ask necessary questions that we think will help us through. Thank you very much. So, Doc.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Omishakin, for that introduction. Well, today, first, I hope I can share my slide.
Yes, you can. You are a co-host. You can.
Okay, good. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Just put it on slideshow. We can see it.
Okay. Yes.
Good. All right. Good. Yes. Good morning, everyone. You are welcome to today's program. And today we'll be looking at literature review together with focus on the key ingredients of empirical and methodological literature review, be it for thesis or for research. The ingredients remains the same. There's nothing, there's clearly no clear difference between these two. So we'll be reminding ourselves on what we know and also on a few things for some time. And also, of course, so it's a reminder for us, basically. But before then, before we really move into the issue, there's a little thing here which I would love to share. Of course, we all, if we listen to the news carefully, we all know what's going on around the world with the issue of the COVID pandemic, and also with the kind of things even going on with in the US as of today. But at the initial stage of the COVID, there were issues around whether that virus was planned, and they were able also to link the virus with the commencement of 5G network. But today we know better. And it was a conspiracy theory as at that time. But as evidence and also other issues, came on board, and people were able to see the pandemic in the true sense of it, you rarely hear of the link between the pandemic and 5G again. So there are some issues that we want to look into as a matter of just contextual preamble, following on the issue of the conspiracy or the conspiracy theory. And the issue remains conspiracy theory until we have evidence, to provide or to support or to against it. So the focus is on gathering evidence. This focus is on how we also gather the evidence to be able to then support the claim, which we call the conspiracy theory. But how we gather the evidence is also very important. And that would then require on the previous knowledge on how such things are done. And hence the need for literature review. Whether we're doing forensic investigation or whether we are doing any kind of investigation, academic investigation, there is always the need to rely on what the literature says. In other words, on what the previous studies have done, on what the previous investigations have done, on how they were able to carry out that investigation. And that seems to be the main focus of what the literature review is all about. For us to go into it, we'll have a few outlines to guide us. First, we'll go, of course, we are reminding ourselves on what literature review means, and the purpose of literature review, what it entails, and some, little remarks on methodological review and how the literature review should be organized. Of course, we'll conclude with some remarks. And this is what will guide us today. If we go by what Clark, said, and clearly was able to come up with what a literature review, should entail. And it says that a literature review surveys scholarly articles, books, and other sources. Other sources including dissertation, conference proceedings, and any other sources that can be, referenced, in the academic world. Of course, all these must be, relevant to the topic, and the purpose of that, of the literature review, is for the writer to have to critically, survey the literature on the topic the writer, is working on, so as to show that conviction, to the audience on the topic, and to also show that the topic is worth addressing. And this is a summary of everything that we'll be doing. And if we then look at what others would then think of literature review, we note that it's actually a survey of everything, okay, that has been written about any particular topic, okay, either in terms of theories or in terms of the topic or the research questions that they've been dealt with. And it is clearly an exposition, okay, of the existing knowledge and the reasoning around the area one is researching. And it is also a clear critical query of the existing studies. This second part, which is the critical query, is what makes literature review what it is, a review. And it is until when that is clearly done that we can be guided with all other aspects of either the thesis or the research. In terms of the introduction, what will inform what is contained in the introduction is actually what has been done under the literature review. In terms of research design, the literature review is a guide. In terms of the choice of methodology, the literature review will also guide that methodology. So it's important for us to understand the need for this literature in the way we should do it. Then we're going to have a clear narrative in terms of other aspects of the thesis or the research. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I can hear you. Yep.
Can someone come? Okay, just to be clear. So the purpose of a literature review, of course, it establishes motivations. Of course, the motivation for doing the research. It conveys the reader that the area in which you are researching information is actually very significant. It's also very important. There are questions that will come up from there. Okay. One of which has been highlighted here. Why did I think that doing the research in this area will be interesting or important at all to anyone? If one is able to provide answer to that, then you are doing something, good. The other question, the other issue is that it also conveys the reader that we shouldn't, and clearly they've been able to say that, we shouldn't completely be satisfied with existing literature. There will always be something to add, and there will always be a query about what the previous studies have done. So a critical or a critique in this regard, or we say a critical review of the existing literature, will fill some important and interesting gap or address some important or limitations that have been known about the previous studies. Okay? And the question that comes in here is that what made me think that more research in this particular sub-area that I chose was warranted? These are questions that should guide our steps and also the process of reviewing the literature. Another purpose is that it also explains why the research took a precise direction in which the writer has pursued. First, it explains and justifies the research idea. In this regard, we talk about the theories, on the theory that supports the hypothesis. And there is a saying, which I was able to just quote out from somewhere, that this necessitates argument. If there is no argument, then we don't have any issue to discuss. There must be an argument. In other words, because if things are certain, we are very sure of everything, then you don't have hypothesis, you have facts, and there is no need for you to do any research. And because things are not certain, because there are arguments, there will always be the need to do, the research. Then it also explains how the historical context for your research guided what you did. These are the purpose of the literature review. Another one is that it explains why you conducted your research in the way you have done. And what it does is to guide also the choice of your theoretical framework. We've talked about in the last session of series of work that we'll be doing here, we've talked about the theoretical framework. We talk about the theoretical review. Okay. Literature review will guide you on the choice of all these things, even the theory itself. And here I was able to just highlight something on what the theory does. That the theory guides what you look out for when collecting your data in terms of the variables, the choice of variables, how you analyze and how you interpret. Okay? And because of that, to do a proper literature review is important. And when we say proper literature review, it doesn't necessarily mean summarizing, what you've read. It goes beyond that. It also means that you should critique what you've read in order to have a clear gap as to what you are doing. Another purpose is that it convinces the reader that the choice of research methods are well thought through. In other words, not just a random pick of a method, which some of us, are fond of doing. We've also fallen into that in the past. Once we see a particular method, then you begin to look for where to apply it. You don't pick a method before you apply it to any issue. You understand what the issue is, And understanding what the issue is means going through what the literature review says. And that will guide the choice of your method, not picking the method first. Okay, so what approaches could have been used for your research? How did you think the approach you chose was the best one given any constraints? Writing critically here also involves writing with an awareness of the potential limitations of your approach, which means also explaining how you intend to address, that flaws or the limitation with that approach. So in summary, we can state clearly that a literature review helps us to bring clarity and focus to the research problem, to improve our methodology. It broadens our knowledge in terms of the research area, and it also helps us to explain the findings, in a more clear manner. In other words, contextualizing our findings. And what does it entail? What it entails first is to have a clear cut research question. Once your research question is clear, then you begin to then look for, studies around that research question. Okay, it means to gather the necessary studies around the research area. You'll be able to sort, those studies according to how and categorize them according to how you want to do it. And also it helps you to eliminate information that are not relevant to what you are doing. So having a research question or the primary research question is very important in your literature review. So you search for relevant paper, for relevant studies and materials on the topic. Reading is very important, okay? There are usually questions around reading. Do you have to read every word of any article? Okay, that's a big question. And what's the threshold of the number of articles that you have to read on any particular paper? I have a friend that I've read, for his own thesis, he's read more than 500 articles, some up to 700 articles. Okay, we will talk about that maybe during the question and answer session. So reading is very important. Summarizing and synthesizing the key ideas of what you read in order to establish what is known in what you are researching on. The second part of what it entails is the comparing and critiquing, these previous studies. Of course, not criticizing the previous study, but critiquing. Okay, there are ways in which we can critique a work without necessarily running down on the authors of those previous studies. And this will help us in identifying the clear debate and the controversies, in the research area that we want to do. So let's go into each of these areas. Reading, summarizing, and synthesizing what is meant in that in your own words, you need to summarize and synthesize the key findings. And your guiding questions, to do this are, what do we know about the immediate area? Of course, the area in which you are researching. What are the key arguments, the key characteristics, concepts, or any key figures that you need also to bring out? What are the existing debates, the theories, in this research area? And what is the common, or the common methodologies applied in this area? These will guide clearly how you summarize and how you synthesize. Maybe a few examples will suffice. Before we go to the example, one thing that one usually fall into is that, which is a problem, is that we intend, or we are most likely summarize based on individual research. In other words, you organize your issues, your discussions around individual papers rather than a particular idea or a particular question or a particular issue or theme. Okay? So what or how that manifests is you just listing, or summarizing different authors without any deliberate attempt at infusing them together, in synthesizing and blending this together. And the solution to this is by using what is called the mind map. And this will help you to have or to organize all your materials under a particular theme or under a particular question, research questions, or the different research questions that you have. Then you can then begin to see how one links, to the other. The other way to go about it is by discussing what or categorizing your literature review according to research question using what is called the notes. Of course, this note, I'll show you an example. We'll try to, in a very smart manner, in a table-like structure, you will be able to then structure the different studies along with, a particular research question. And this will help you to have a clear idea of what you are doing. Example of the mind map is what is shown here. Of course, this is a topic that was just picked from somewhere. Here, you'll be able to link the research question, which is at the center of what you have here. You'll be able to link that with the first issue, which is your motivation. It will also guide what the previous research, have done. It will guide what the choice of your theoretical framework, the methods, and you'll be able to then link everything, together. Why does this mind map may just, tell you what the motivations are, the previous research, the method, and the theoretical framework. You may not be able to clearly see the linkages, among all these things. But there is a second one here, which can then link them together for you. And here you also start with your questions of interest. And in this case, we are looking at co-witnesses and the effects of the discussion on high witness memory. From here, which is our item one here, you'll be able to link with it at item 2, item 3, and all along like that up to item 6. Of course, from 1 to around 3 or thereabout, those questions are purely based on question 1 to 5, actually. They are purely based on what you discuss under your introduction, and then the other issues ranging from question 6 to 8 were issues you then discuss under your literature review. So the point is, even for you to clearly have a logical and consistent, introduction, this map is what should guide you in the first instance, okay? And you'll be able to have, a clear cut and consistent, problems or the statement of the problem as we call it. Now, the other one is the note-taking. Note-taking is, like I said, is in the form of, Excel spreadsheet like this. And what you can do smartly, which an example has been given here, is to clearly identify the research. And here you will be able to identify the authors and where it is published, the key findings from that study, Supporting evidence in this regard, we talked about, the kind of variables, the kinds of method that were used, and the sample size of what we use, the strengths and limitations of that study, and the significance or the implication of that study. You can extend it beyond what you have here. This is just a sample of what can be used. And by the time you sort your different studies according to the research questions, then you are clearly having, along the spreadsheet, different sections addressing different or the various research questions that you have. It brings clarity into what you're doing. It brings, a clear idea on what others have done in terms of method, in terms of what they found. And it also helps you in identifying a clear gap in the literature. Maybe an example will suffice to see how a summary is done, and then how we then synthesize what has been summarized. The next slide, of course, the one in the red box, is where my interest lies. Of course, we'll just go through everything together. So an example here, and the research question is, how can managers foster the development of effective work team or work groups? Okay, and this is what was given. And clearly what you see here is, of course, you have that introductory statement and what Harrison et al. Said about, team social integration. And what follows is something around team performance. And the question is, so what? So if you can't provide a clear answer to that question, so what, then maybe something is still missing. And so what here, of going by the research question, the so what here is that what we have in these two sentences or three sentences, as what we have there has not addressed the second part of the research question, which has to do with issues around effective management of group or development of effective, team group. Okay. What we have here is a summary. The next slide is also a summary, but then we try to then blend the 3 or 2 sentences together, which is what we have here. Rather than having isolated sentences, you are then able to link social integration with the implication on the team performance. Of course, they also try to define it. So in this example, we have a synthesized, not just a summary, but also synthesized. Those are the so what part of it, which is on the next slide. We'll then try to see how, you link the first part of your research question, which is the social integration, to the effectiveness, of managing a group, which is what has been done in this regard. Okay. So it's important to have that clear or clarity as to the research question and see how any statement that you have in your literature review try to address, those research questions. Comparing and critiquing. And here, you try to evaluate the strengths, the weaknesses of the work. How do the different studies relate? What is new? What is different? What is controversial? What views need, further testing? What evidence is lacking, inconclusive, or contradictory? What research design or method seems unsatisfactory? And we should always remember that the goal is not just to summarize. the existing literature, but to critique these studies. In other words, you are to make a case that there is a significant gap or a limitation with the existing literature that needs to be addressed. There are signposts, I will call them, that is often used when you critique, and how you also express, some sentences. There are sentences that are, or there are issues, there are ideas that are clearly true, and which an example is given here, that influenza is caused by a virus, which is true. There are those that are probably true, and how you express them will also have some signposts. And signpost is what has been underlined there, like they seems, to results. Then the third category, what is regarded as something that is probably or possibly true. Okay, and the signpost is the use of may. Okay, the student group may perform badly on an assignment may. Okay, these are signposts. We also have edges and we have boosters. Edges will try or tries to show or indicate lack of complete certainty about some issue. So an example is what we gave earlier. Seems, appears, likely or speculate or possible or might, these are, edges. Then we have boosters, which shows, indicate conviction about what you are saying, as a writer. And the examples are also, shown here. When you say a particular study demonstrates, you exactly know what you're saying there. Example is given here of, okay. I have, okay, this is the correct one. Okay, an example is given here, which I actually got from James Hang in 2009, and was able to indicate clearly, the issue of critiquing a study by expressing what the authors have done, and then showing clearly the flaws in the idea of what they've done. This is in terms of the idea. The next example is in terms of the method. And here clearly we're able to show that the approach used by previous studies was, use of cross-country regression. Then it was able to hang on the flaw of, the methodology or the economic problem associated with the specification of cross-country, regression, and then providing the need for, of establishing a case for a specific country kind of study, which is what his own work is all about. So you can see the signpost again, while, however, okay? And this is a way to compare studies or to compare ideas and to also then critique, that idea. A little thought on the methodology. My time is almost up. And the little thought will also reiterate what we've mentioned, okay? And the first one is that theses and research articles in general should not just describe the method used, but also provide a justification for that method. The reviewer, or in others, your reader, wants to be convinced that the methods have been well thought through, and there are good reasons for conducting the research in the way that have been proposed. Any given method generally, will have their own weaknesses. Then you should also be able to demonstrate that you are clearly aware of these weaknesses, and then provide how those weaknesses can then be addressed. Okay. These are just highlights on, whether it is empirical or whether it's a methodological. The idea is the same, okay? A clear critique of the previous studies. And that's the way, to go in order to show the gap in terms of the method and the choice of your method. Also, they showed clearly the gap in terms of the reasoning or the thinking around the area in which you are researching, and the need to have further investigation in that area. How do we organize our literature review? There are different ways in which this can be done, and we will discuss about 5 of them today. Topical is one way. An example has been given. Of course, using topical suggests that you have subfields of a particular field, sub-areas of a particular subject area or approaches. An example here of how that can, be demonstrated is the example that have been given here. And we say 3 important areas of this field have received attention, A, B, C. Then you begin to then pick A and discuss A. You move to B, then you discuss B, and C, then you discuss C. The other one has to do with distance to close. In other words, studies that are from distance then to more, or some studies that are closer to your areas of interest. So you start by describing studies with general similarities to current research, and end with the studies that are most relevant to what you are doing. Of course, these, most times they apply it to the method, okay, or the review of the methodological review, as it were. So you have these studies applies the procedures used in method O, okay, most similar to current research. Okay. This is just an example. All right. The other one is by coming up with a debate and then arguing from debate point of view. It doesn't matter when that debate, came up. The focus is the debate. The guiding principle is the debate. So you emphasize the various strands of research, and with proponents of various models openly criticize one another. Most useful when clear opposing positions are present in the literature, okay? Examples is also given. The second model argues that the first model is wrong for 3 reasons. Then you begin to talk about the different flaws of the first model. Chronological, which is time-bound, and this, you can have a clear idea of the evolution, which is an example, the evolution of the discourse in financial development, for instance, starting from the 50s, which was picked up later in the 90s, 70s and 90s. 70s first and applied in the 90s, okay? And you can then begin to even talk about the contemporary period on this same issue. So that's chronological. Then you can also start from example of a seminar study, picking that seminar study. An example is given here. Following a particular study, research fell into 2 camps. Then you begin to then discuss along the different camps or along the different strands, okay? So that's organization of the researcher. And there are other various ways in which that can be done. But this is how, examples that we just want to highlight here. So some concluding statement here is that, first, you summarize the main findings of your review. We provide closure, okay? Explain so what, and also highlight some implication for future research, or how what you've done is connected to your current research. And some final thoughts on what have been said so far. There should be consistent and articulate arguments towards providing purpose of your research. It should be hanging. No statement should be redundant. Every statement should add value to your review. Revise again and again to ensure that you as a writer, you have a clear voice and your voice is audible in that review. It's not just saying Mackinnon said this. No. Your voice should be loud. Your voice should be clear while you are reading, while you are reading it. Avoid plagiarism. There are different forms of plagiarism, and we should try as much as possible to avoid it. Literature review cannot be done in a haste. It takes time, sometimes months before you can do a clear literature review. So I'll stop here, and I thank you all for listening. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Afolabi, it's over to you.
Okay, so
you can stop sharing, sir. Doctor, stop sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Ilola, thank you very much for that wonderful exposition on literature review. We appreciate you. I mean, we didn't expect less than that. That was quite on point in terms of what we can do to do a good literature review. I won't like to repeat what you have said, but I will just say my own takeaway, which is that it's very difficult to do a good study if you have not done a good literature review. And why? Because most of the time for academic research, we like to shift or contribute or one way or the other add to the body of knowledge and shift the frontier of knowledge. How can you shift the frontier of knowledge, or how can you shift a frontier that you don't identify? And from what he has told us, we need to identify the frontier. We need to understand what others have done, because most of the time we may think that we know, but when we read, we will see other perspectives. And he has also shown us that there are many ways of presenting our work. It shows us a tabular way that we can use to summarize our literature. That has been very useful to many students or many researchers. Even some researchers, when they don't finally present that table in their work, it's always very useful because they can summarize what they have in that table, and then because it gives a snapshot. Then he has shown us that we can then decide to follow whether we want to be a debate or from distance to the recent time, or we want it to be chronological or a seminar work. I mean, quite a number of things. And it sounded a warning, which I would like to say again because we had the session on it. Avoid plagiarism. Let me say it again. Avoid plagiarism. And let me say it the last time. Avoid plagiarism. Many of us plagiarize. We steal ideas. We steal. I mean, that's the right word to use. We steal ideas. We plagiarize others and we plagiarize ourselves. We'll say, maybe I was the one that did it 5 years ago. Is it not my thesis? So we plagiarize. Let's be careful. You can't be a good writer, a good researcher, if you continue to plagiarize. And I think it's very important. And he has told us that it's very useful. We spend time. we can free time that we use on social media, time that we use to watch TV, time that we use to do all sorts of things, and use it to do a good literature search, a good literature review. In fact, I was told when I was doing my thesis that the bulk of the work that you're actually doing is actually to know the frontier. Yeah, you are contributing to knowledge, but your contribution is going to be very small. But you must be an expert in that area where you want to write research or do research. So literature review is very important. Once again, Dr. Indola, thank you very much. We appreciate you for all those things. Myself, I've written some things down. I've learned a lot, and I think I will apply them in my future endeavors as I write, continue to learn and write. So thank you, everyone, and thanks for staying with us up to this moment. It's now time for questions. Professor Bright, most times people just type, right? We don't need to speak. Or we can raise our hand electronically, because if you just raise it where you are, we may not be able to see you. You can type it in the chat box. We'll see it and document it and raise the question. Or you can raise your hand, then we'll call upon you. Thank you very much. It's time for question and answer.
Okay, I've already checked the chat box. Dr. Folabi, are you listening?
Yes, I'm with you.
So I have 1 or 2 questions. I saw them from the chat box. So others can be sending their chat box before we open up for people to talk.
Okay.
Now, one question I saw here, and I'm going to refer it to you because Dr. Folabi has dealt extensively on this area. And before I say that, please, I want to plead with everybody that if you go to the Genomics website, some of these things you are asking questions on, we have dealt with them in the past. Okay, so go to the Genomics website, and I will advise that you register there so that you can get notification of what we are doing all the time. Okay, so if even you can download materials without being registering, please. So the materials are free. And all the videos of what we have done, we'll upload them on also. So when you get to the website, on the website, you will see register. It's good to register so that you can be having notification of what we do and whatever thing we upload. And also, it's also good that we subscribe to the YouTube channel so that when we now upload a video, you just get a notification directly. So registration is that when you register anything we do, you get email direct. So you get our message direct to your email. So when you get to the website, you click on Genomics. Okay, so because some people are having problems downloading material. When you click on Genomics, on the website, there's a place called Genomics. When you click on it, you will now see what we call economic teachings. When you click on economic teachings, you will see the different things we have talked about in the past, plagiarism, so many topics, okay? Click on that topic and then click on download. You will download the slide of what we have presented download it free of charge. So it's available. After today, we are going to upload the one for today. But the one we have done in the past, you will see them, okay? So let me go into the question. One of the questions somebody asks is that he said the real problem is about how to, let me leave that. Let me go to the one I wanted to ask. I want to forward to Dr. Folabi. He said, how can one logically and systematically avoid plagiarism? Dr. Folabi? He said, okay. How can one? So like I said, go to that website, you will see a presentation on plagiarism. How do you avoid? It's a detail, in fact, almost how many pages of presentation. But let him give you a brief answer on that.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I think just as you've said, we've done something on that. So we will advise that this person, Mr. Egbosa Igbinosa, should please download that material. But let me just say this. Plagiarism is enticing. I won't lie to you. Somebody told me, I'll tell you 2 experiences. Somebody told me one day and said, I've been thinking on this issue. I've thought it myself, but I went to the literature, I saw the idea. It is better written than the way I could have put it down. So it's just like you are still going to the market to buy egusi, buy pepper, and the restaurant has already prepared the food with maybe a pounded yam, very nicely made. You just eat the thing now. Why do you have to do all the wala? So that was his experience. He told me that. And I said, I understand that it's enticing. Another person met me one day. He said, how can I write something that's big as this for my head? I mean, it's already somewhere. let me just use and cut and paste and arrange it and weave idea into each other so that I will be able to. So it's enticing. I won't lie to you. Even very advanced researcher, experienced researcher also suffer the same problem. Especially now that most of us rely on the internet. If it were to be when we go to the library serial section and read journals, it's very difficult to write out a whole page with your hand. But these days, you just see the material somewhere, copy and paste is just 1 second, Control C, Control A, Control C, Control V. Then you just juggle the thing. So I understand that. So nobody blames you for that, but with time you will go. But let's just see the question. How do the person say logically and systematically? I don't want to say logically and systematically. Let's just say, how do you avoid it? Because logically and systematically means that the person is also trying to say, how can I dribble my way around plagiarism? So look at the table that Dr. Indola presented. That table, I always like it. And I mentioned something the other time that even if you are not going to be putting it in your research or because of page issue, because it's not part of the structure of the research you are doing, you can still do that table. Why? It will force you to read those papers. That's the first step. It will force you to read those papers. Second step, it will force you to sift out essential components of those papers in your own words. That is the second thing. The third thing is that it allows you to see a particular paper in the context of other papers. So you see 10, 20. In my own case, sometimes I will do 50, like 100. It depends on the kind of research. So it allows me to see a particular paper in the context of other papers. That is the third thing. Fourth thing, I now look at whether there is a particular pattern for me to study. So it depends on, do I now want to go chronologically or seminar? As he said, I mean, he told us all those issues. Maybe most times, in my own case, I like topical. I mean, I'm just saying that. Maybe I like topical. I want to go topical. I want to say, many people have discussed this issue, but there are many aspects of the discussion. This I just said now, I've not plagiarized. I'm using my own words, isn't it? And I said, there are views in this area. When I said those views, I will mention the general view in my own words. I will refer to people that have given those views. Don't forget, I'm writing the view, discussing the view, summarizing their papers in my own words. Yet, I'm referring to the original proponents of those views. It is very interesting and easy for me because already I have everything summarized in a paper, in a table. So I'm just weaving things together. At the same time, I'm referring to the original generators of the ideas. So if I see 4 views, 5 views in my table, 10 views, before I know it, I've written 10 pages of a literature review without copying anything from anybody. Yet, I still refer to those people that submitted those ideas. When you read that material, it will also tell us more. But that is, to me, is a very cheap way of avoiding plagiarism among many other. As you go, I mean, I know some of us are grown already, but as you go, you then evolve your own pattern. But that is a starting point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Falabi. You know, before I ask the next question, I will also direct that question to you. And let me read it so that you'll be thinking about it as I will say this. Somebody said, what variable of your research title do you base your literature review on? What variable? Is it dependent variable or independent variable? So that you'll be able to, you answer that. Because I will later ask the presenter also, but I want you to answer that also. Please, I want to first and foremost reiterate what Dr. Falabi had just said. Most times, we just look at literature review, we download materials, and what most students, in fact, even most people who are not just students do, researchers do, is that they look at somebody else's literature review, copy the literature review and paste it, and begin to adjust. You have not done literature review, it's somebody else's literature review you are doing, or you have copied. I will plead with us that the reason why you download each article that you have downloaded is to first and foremost read it and understand Forget the review. Because the reason why you do research is for, like one of the children we said, is for you to know. And it is only literature that can make you to know. Dr. Falabi just explained that you are doing a study in an area. So you are supposed to know that area, whether by theory, by empirics, or the that are there. So that when they are discussing, you find yourself in a seminar, you find yourself in a policy meeting or something. Those things you have read will begin to reflect in your mind to provide discussion as you are meeting with people. So the first thing you do is to first and foremost read each of the articles by yourself. When you read and understand them, you should be able to put them down by yourself. If you don't understand them, you won't be able to put them down in the language that you can put it down by yourself. But if you do that yourself, you avoid plagiarism. I am very, very sure. And I also want to say something before Dr. Falabi answered that question, is that please, most of us, and not all of us, when we want to do research, we start with, maybe Google Scholar or just normal Google. Please, for a serious research, base your literature on good journals, top good journals that have been published in Science Direct, Springer, Emerald, Wiley. When you start from those kind of journals, I am sure that you will have, first-hand information about the topical issues, not by all these, publishers or all these writers or researchers you see in every nooks and cranny, who might not even understand the key issue first, and then because they want to just run the issue without having a proper understanding. But when you have access to good journals in any of these top places like Science Direct, Springer, Wiley, and you read those ones, the key issues, you have them, you have first hand, and then it is you that will now paraphrase it in a way you understand. That is what I would say concerning plagiarism and avoiding plagiarism. Okay, so Dr. Falabi, can you answer that question, sir?
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. So when I look at this question, I think it's from one Adebanwa Ayowole. Okay, so I think from that question, the person just wants to reaffirm what he already knows. Let me say that. Most of the times, I won't say in all the times, because we have to be very careful. Knowledge, you pick knowledge by reading. When you read, you know more than we can even say here. Most of the time, you want to have your review around your dependent variable. That is your variable. That is your interest. Determinant of savings. Poverty among rural households. Whatever. Foreign direct investment and something. Most of the times, you want your review to be around your dependent variable. If you are fortunate enough, you will see a review that links your dependent variable and your independent variable. Therefore, your review will still be around how your independent variable affect your dependent variables. There are situations when the particular independent variable that you are interested in, you are unable to see a direct literature of how it affects your dependent variable. But that of dependent variable is settled. Everything is your dependent variable. That is what you want to study. So it's not negotiable. And as I said, it's better if you are able to get good literature that link your dependent and independent. That's actually the best thing to do. It's possible in some cases that you are able to see the dependent variable, you are able to see the independent variables, but you are not able to see somewhere, somehow, or something that brings them together. I think that is when this kind of question will apply. Don't forget, your literature will have to be about how your dependent variable and independent variable are connected. As I said, it's possible that you are unable to see, because I've seen cases where researchers do the dependent variable kind of what determines it separately, do the independent variables or variable on what they can affect and how they move around, but they will still find a systematic way of establishing a connection. May not be direct, may be through another intervening concept. That means you have no choice. You must also go to that one. So I've seen people that have probably done something about exports and maybe exports and productivity. they probably are unable to find something is possible, but they can go through maybe capital affect productivity, then productivity affects something or competitive. There's a way they can. I mean, when you read, there are so many in the literature. So finally, your literature review will be on how all of them affect one another. That's the best. If you can't see, in very rare cases, you must be able to establish a pattern or a path through which those your independent variable will finally affect dependent. So make sure you have all of them in your literature review. You can't just review the dependent variable and leave the independent variable. In fact, you cannot even do only independent variable without touching the dependent variable. So they are the same. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Would
Dr. Misaki wanted to say something.
Would Dr. Onyola or Dr.
I saw your hand.
Okay, thank
you. Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to speak to what Dr. Afolabi had already spoken to, and I think he had handled it properly. The only addition that I want to have here speaks to the fact that issues around thesis writing or research writing, especially when it comes to the literature review, empirical and the methodological, everything boils down to how vast you are in that area, in that issue you are considering. So it's not a point analysis. It's like a marathon. If you don't, for instance, if you are, let me speak to those who are growing up, because I know many people already they are there. Many people are writing their thesis now, so that may not be relevant. But for those people who are coming up, say you are just being admitted to the PhD program, or you are in your master's program, or you are just thinking about an area, the more knowledge you have in that area personally, not as a result of the fact that there is need for you to do a paper, then you are rushing into different literature review. The more knowledge you have, the more the scope of what you are going into. So people run into problems when it comes to literature review, mostly because they don't have any prior knowledge about that issue. And the moment you don't have any idea, maybe you just, approach your PhD supervisor and just say, oh, you are my student. Oh, great. Okay. So I want you to go and write on this and this. It happens. And you can't argue. So people may not be able to reject and say, I have interest in this. Somebody just, will just tell you to do something that you are hearing for the first time. The next thing to do for you in your mind is, okay, let me just go ahead and apply all these strategies, literature review, and then begin to, you may get lost, because the problem you are facing now is that you have no idea. You have not even in one way or the other entered into that area before. But if it's something that interests you, and that's why mostly people always advise the supervisors, and if you are a supervisor here, it's always advisable for you not to force titles or issues on your students. Let them guide them and know what interests them. If that area interests you, you will have been thinking about it from your master's program or for your first degree. You will have seen it around the country. The thing will have been bothering you. So it's easy for you to venture into literature review and start getting yourself, okay, this is what I need. But if you don't, you begin to run into this issue of plagiarism. You begin to say, okay, where do I start from? Which factors should I consider? How do I move from A to B? The most important thing is make sure you are doing what interests you. It has a long way of easing the whole process. If you don't do what interests you, you might get stuck with literature review and methodological review, because you can get a lot of stuff, just like other speakers have said. But when you look at them, you neither be here nor there. I've seen some literature reviews that when you start, somebody will just say, okay, according to Edis and Hedis 1932, he said, and then you just quote or you put something there. The next, maybe Edis was talking about export and productivity. Now, the next line will just be, though Adewale did not look at this, he looked at that one will look into human capital development. So you'll be going from one side to the other and nothing will make sense. So I would advise the younger ones in the house today to make sure that what interests you is what you are going into. It will help you a lot. And when you are going into it, it gives you the idea of, okay, I know what is happening. I have the reservoir within me already. Now, when you are looking at literature, you are looking at journals, you're already being guided by your own intuition. But if you don't have anything, if you are blank and you look at those things, there will be so many, there will be so many of them, and you'll be directed to everywhere. And your journey may not have that destination. So please make sure that even if you are given, let's say it's a strategy in your school that you can't argue with your supervisor and he or she has given you something that you just have to stick. Take that thing in first and ask yourself what it means. Take it easy so that you don't just rush into literature review. The more you understand what it means basically, by few literature reviews at first, the idea is not just to force everything down into your thesis or your research. Understand the rudiments. What are people talking about? Okay, so let me look at this aspect. Oh, I think I love it. I think it's affecting Nigeria. Oh, I think this is like a typical case of African economy. Okay, I think somebody talked about this on TV. I think the moment you have that idea guiding you before you launch into it, it's as a way of making sure that you are well guided and you are not being lost. You are not being pushed into something that you don't really understand. It has happened to me before, and I know it has happened to different persons. You start your literature review and you never end it because you keep going, and you don't even know what you are doing, when you are to stop, and the issue of how many journals should I include, where should I stop, how many pages. These are the questions that shows that something is fundamentally wrong. How many pages should it be? How many journals should I quote? Should I quote the recent? Should I quote the, and those supervisors, sometimes they don't help. With due respect, some of them will just say, you have seen your literature review. There is no 2020 here. Go and do literature review. It doesn't have to be by, knowledge is not by most recent publication. There's some knowledge in the area that you are looking into, that the issue that you are looking into might see the issues around 2010, 2015, or 14, or 2000, right? So that you don't force yourself into, let me just look at somebody that mentioned energy growth in 2020. I just put it there. So please make sure you start it relaxed, understand the issue you are going into, and take your time to know your limitation along the path. And then you'll be able to answer some of the fundamental questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. I have one question here. I'm going to which one of my professors told me some years back, and I'll add that to what you have just said. One of my professors, who said is a professor, is in Canada, and he said when he started his thesis, he was having a topic that he was having in his mind that he wanted to go into, but his supervisor in Canada gave him another topic. So what he was having in mind, he was doing that by the side. At the same time, he followed the supervisor to do what he should do, and he was able to have a proper understanding about that area. At the same time, the area that he was having interest. So it was good that he was able to do what the supervisor asked him to do at that time also. That doesn't mean that it's not everything that the supervisor asks you to do. Sometimes that will be useful, but the supervisor is actually there to actually help you because he has gone ahead of you to, and so he's supposed to mentor you and you are supposed to follow, okay? So, and the other thing I want to say is this, is that one of my professors made a statement until today, it is very, is always in my mind. And it says that as a writer, as a researcher, don't put anything in your thesis or in your research that you don't understand. Don't just put it somewhere that because anything you want to put on your thesis, you must, or your research, you must have a proper understanding. That is why you have the literature to study, not just to review. It is first to study. When you study, you understand. And when you understand, you can review. Without studying, you cannot review. Okay? So, because it is when you have a proper grasp of the key issues, and like I said, The key issues, like Dr. Misakin said, it mustn't be 2020. It can be, you know, in earlier years, depending on the topical issues or whatever thing that you are interested in. So a proper study and a proper reading and understanding. One of us, yeah, I remember when I was doing my PhD and I visited his room, Dr. Adeni. When I got to his room, I was scared whether I was doing PhD thesis or not. Because I saw, as in, he has downloaded and printed so many materials in his rooms that I went to my room was empty. And that motivated me to see the need to download materials, read them line. And when you take any of his material, you see that he has read line by line. Literature is to expand your horizon and your knowledge about the area. That is the first thing. Writing is secondary, review is second, and it will guide you. So, and like I said, what you don't understand in your writing. Okay, so what is the question the person is asking? The person said, real problem is about how to critique literature. Said, how can we critique literature? One, in identifying, you know, in identifying the gaps and making contribution. I want to say that I would have said somebody should answer it, but we have in November, first Wednesday in November, we are going to have a training on how do you critique literature and how do you identify gap and how do you contribute to knowledge. So it's going to come up in next November, the first Wednesday. It's a detailed thing about identifying gap from your literature when you read it. How do you intertwine the issues? How do you now be able to now bring out the gaps and contribute to knowledge as you write as a writer? So I will say that, let me give you that exposure by next month. That is a detailed training that will come up. And then our will be coming up on how do you write an award-winning or a grant-winning proposal. So please take note. I don't know whether Dr. Misaki wants to say something about. Okay, let me ask Dr. Luatosin to give us a brief. Can you please give us just Dr. Adeni? Somebody said, how do you the possibility of identifying gaps, even though it's going to be a detailed topic to be discussed on next month. Can you just, you know, give us a preview of how can somebody, you know, intertwine issues and then possibly identify gap? And before you do that, sir, and let me also say it, Dr. Adeni in one of our teaching talked about literature search. Okay, so those of you who are troubled about how do I search the literature, how do I go about it, he talked about different ways for searching the literature. So if you visit the website, you also have that material. But sir, can you just give us just a little how does it take to identify gap, sir? You can mute yourself.
Yeah, okay, can you hear me now?
Very well.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be with everyone again. Actually in the middle of some other meeting, but I just thought I should join here briefly. Now, to that point of identification of gap, I think it's something that I don't think there's no strict formula or way of saying this is how to do it that I can prescribe, but it's a combination of quite a number of the things that have been discussed, at least from the few minutes that I listened to both Dr. Mishaki and Professor Ereha. One important way of identifying gaps that we all are aware of is through a very thorough engagement with the literature. I like the point that Professor Ereha raised about the literature, that it is not about having reviewing of literature in mind, that you need to study, meaning that you are not just looking at those papers and what people have done in the literature as a means of just extracting one or two lines or statements that you want to add to your thesis. You are interested in an engagement with that subject, meaning that you are also putting yourself in the mind of the authors and thinking, okay, which context did they do this research? Why would they raise these kinds of questions? What methodologies did they use? And how, what findings and how did they interpret the findings? So the literature, in short, an active engagement with it is one way of defining a gap. Another alternative way is that sometimes that gap can come from actual observation. can come from actual observation, meaning that based on your understanding or knowledge of a particular context, research context, particularly for primary data work, you can identify something that is researchable, okay, and that you can attempt to profile solutions to just by observing. Just by observing. This might not be a direct example in economics, but there was a few years ago, I was walking around town with a friend of mine, and we saw people gathered around an ATM machine. They were clustered around that machine, and we started thinking that the way these people are clustered around this machine, they will be peeping at each other's pin and all of that, and people can get defrauded through that means. And we started thinking a bit of around that to say, okay, what is ATM fraud? How can it be perpetrated and things like that? And before we knew what was happening, we had put something together and we did a proposal that won us a grant that took us to several places. So that wasn't because we had read the financial crime literature. We started with an observation, an actual thing, and we tried to see a problem and try to think back. It was after we had settled what the issue was in our minds that we then started engaging with literature and found, in India, they had done something like this. So place they have done something like this. That's when we now started engaging more with literature and reviewing. So that's one way. Another way is working with people in your field who are at more advanced level. So that's why issues around mentoring, supervision also matters. Sometimes your supervisor is actively working in an area, and because he understands and knows the issues in the area and the gaps, okay, he can also make a suggestion to say, well, this area, this is what has been covered, but this hasn't been done. So why don't you take this on as your PhD work? One final point that I would like to make is that in some settings as well, particularly in advanced settings, and even in some places like South Africa within the continent, where there are a lot of research grants coming in, sometimes students do their PhD research as part of bigger grant projects. So there's a grant project for 3-4 years that expects that so and so and so will be delivered. And so people get doctoral candidates, postdocs to work on those subjects. So while you are working on that part, there are two deliverables. One is that you deliver a PhD thesis, which is yours and earns you a degree. And then the other one is that you also contribute input to the final report on the larger project. So just on top of my head, those are a few ideas that I thought I should push forward. But like I said, it might not come as a fixed formula, but whichever of these approaches that you find useful, what is important is that level of dedication to the engagement with the subject. It's PhD research, and it's likely going to be the only time in your entire career when you will be focused on just one narrow subject. I won't pretend about it. Once you finish the PhD, you can ask all the professors and our elders in this place. It becomes extremely difficult for you to have that kind of focus on a particular thing sustained for a long time. At best, you just write papers incrementally here and there. But the PhD gives you an opportunity of 3 to 4 years of focusing exclusively on a particular subject. So you mustn't come out of that process ill-equipped on the subject that you focused on. It is 3-4 years of one's life, and it's important that you own it and that you make the right investment. So thank you very much for this space and time.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Adeni, for that extensive, very, very extensive and expository discussion or answer to the question. I have one question here, and I'm going to direct that question to Dr. Oyinlola. Somebody said, what is the maximum number of papers or number of literature that will be enough for a thesis? You know, you wanted to know how many papers or how many literature is enough for a thesis. But before you answer that, as you are thinking about that question, I want to say something in line with what Dr. Adeni just said. There's somebody on this platform, you know, who I have two friends who are on this platform who are doing their PhD in the University of Cape Town, and one of them currently is doing his thesis, you know, in line with what Dr. Adeni just said. His thesis is based on a grant work that is already a grant that was given, and then from there the work is ongoing. And it's not that because they read the literature before they saw a research gap. It was, for instance, there was a day it took a picture of one of the areas in Lagos where you have refuse, you have so many bottles, all these bottled water, pure water, a massive place where there are waste. And the question is that pure water nylon is not recyclable, and some of those bottles are not recyclable. So can we now think about, because it's constituting nuisance in terms of waste and affecting the environment, so can we think about how we can make people to pick those things instead of dumping them on the ground? Can we have a framework for recycling them, or a framework for where you now incentivize people to say, okay, if you can instead of dropping on the ground, if you can take it to some place, you get a small amount or something. So they are now designing a framework for whether they should encourage recyclable, more recyclable paper bag that when you go to this your malls, you buy something, that thing should be recyclable, or that thing should be reusable, or you encourage people to say a certain amount is going to be given to you, and then with that amount, you don't need to throw it on the ground. You take it back to the factory, and then you get that amount. So in that way, people will not be dumping things on the ground. People will even pack them and then go to the factory and then begin to get the money from the factory. So something, that kind of idea is what is work is all about. So it's about seeing the problem, in reality, and then thinking about how to go about that. And it's when he now saw the problem, like he said, that when you go into literature, the literature will now guide that, oh, somebody has done this somewhere, somebody has done this somewhere, something like that. Okay, so Dr. Inola, please, can you help us to?
Yeah, thank you. I think the answer to that question has already been given by maybe Dr. Adede when he was speaking. And also when you also mentioned that you visited his room and you said piles of printed papers that he used. For him, of course, he had more than 500 papers that he reviewed. Okay, and that was the understanding as at then. Will he be able to engage such a thing again today? That's a matter of question now. So the question, how many papers, do you need to study or review in a PhD thesis? Japheth asked that question, and also someone had asked that question earlier in terms of the minimum studies that one should review. There is no rule of thumb to it, but as you read and deeply as you study, let me put it that way, as you study and the additional paper that you read, okay, or the marginal value added by the additional paper that you read is near zero, then you know you've reached your peak in terms of any other value that any other paper could add to it. But this is based on the fact that you must have a very wide area of reading, okay? Your area in which you research can be thinly, researched so that there is not much that have been done in that area. So that there's no fast rule to say the standard is for you to review 300 papers or 200 papers. No, you may not have 100 papers in a particular area in which you research. And you may not have reached your peak even by reading even 500 papers in some areas. Okay, so there's no fast rule to it, but you know yourself, if you actually read thoroughly, okay, and you note all these things, or everything that's being said in all this paper, you know by the time you pick additional paper, you more or less can say how the paper will end. And picking additional paper meaning quality paper like Professor Erega has mentioned earlier. Papers published in, notable places. And those are the kind of papers that one, should be reviewing. So I can't tell you to say, yeah, it must be 50, it must be 100, but by the time you pick the next paper and you can't really see any value addition in code to the stock of knowledge of what you've read, then you've reached your peak in terms of the number of paper that you should have. Okay, so that's the way I will answer that. One thing I also need to say in terms of the number of questions that have been raised, and that has to do with the writer's voice. Now, how do you lend your voice while writing? In some way, my colleagues have been able to provide answer to that. Dr. Adeni mentioned you should study, but one thing that they've not really, hinted is that it's beyond studying, but you reflecting on what you read. If you reflect deeply on what you read, Dr. Olowokere mentioned that. Okay, by the time you read a number of papers guided by your research question, then you can reflect and just stay back and see how you can make a statement of your mind about what a particular paper has said. Whatever reflection that is coming out from you without going back to that paper that you've read, whatever reflection that is coming out, note those things down. Okay, just write it down based on how you reflected on the paper and your understanding of that paper and what you have, your summary of that paper. Not looking at the paper and then summarizing. No, reflecting on what you've read of the paper. And by the time you do that, you will have original thinking that have been documented, or original thinking of the paper that have been documented, but not copying the paper word for word or paraphrasing what the paper has done. No. By the time you then do that, you begin to see your voice in the way you synthesize all the different papers, together. Okay, that's about the voice, how to have your voice. The other has to do with your critique of criticism. There is no difference basically between whether you critique or you criticism. But the way we use criticism, or the way in code, that's why I said in code, criticism and the way some will do it is to put a particular previous paper down rather than on the issue. You don't condemn. Condemnation is what is not good, but you critique based on what has been done. Okay, so there's no difference at all between criticism and a critique. I think, okay, the other one, which is about whether there should be a clear different sections between empirical review and the methodological review. And based on the presentation, you'll see that your empirical review will be based on issues that are being discussed in the debate in the literature on the issue which is being discussed. Okay, so, but the methodological is clearly different. It's still based, or it's not based on the issue, but now based on how the issues that you've reviewed earlier, how they undertook the research. So your focus on methodological review is clearly different from the empirical review. So in some schools, in some institutions, they tell you should have a theoretical review, a methodological review, and a methodological review and an empirical review. This is to clearly demarcate, and have clarity on what the gaps are in terms of theory, what the gaps are in terms of the empirical side on the issue itself, and what you have as the gap in terms of the method. That will guide them, even though it is more or less, delineated in with clear demarcation between these lines of thinking. In some other universities, it's not like that, where the idea will just come from the theory itself and how those theories were examined in terms of empirical testing and how the empirical testing were undertaken in terms of the methods applied. So the ideas would just be a straight line story that one can flow with, which is different from segmented lines of story in which we do, even in the University of Ibadan here. Okay, so there are different types. So it depends on the institution and the approach, adopted by that institution. I think I'll stop here unless we have other questions. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks, Prof, for all of those clarifications that you have made. Okay, so I have one or two questions for Dr. Olowokere. I hope Dr. Olowokere is still here. Dr. Olowokere, somebody asked a question of plagiarism, and I want to read the question for you. He said, what do you do when you are not sure that what do you do when you are sure that you didn't copy anybody, but similarity index still shows that there is high level of plagiarism or there is plagiarism? He said, what do you do? You are sure that you did not copy, but similarity index or similarity test still shows that there is plagiarism. Can you join that question for this question? This one is something that has been answered. I don't know why somebody said, is there any specific order of subsections in literature review? I will please also advise the person to visit the website. Somebody has done presentation on literature search and literature review, where he talk about the different ways. It depends on your school and requirement also, but if you visit that, you also see better understanding. So the person is interested in knowing whether there is a specific order of conceptual review, theoretical review, empirical review, methodological review. Some schools don't even do them separately. It depends on where you are doing your program. Okay, but please, can you answer the person, sir?
Okay, thank you, Prof. I like the way the person called the question. When you are sure. Let me just give you a small analogy. So hope there is no policeman or road safety officer. I was in a police station one day, and some guys were also taken in. They said they violated traffic, whatever. So those guys said they didn't do anything, that the policemen just carried them, nothing. So they were arguing. As they were arguing, the DPO was beside me. The DPO was in Mufti. The DPO now, he heard what they were saying. They were calling people. They were saying, we didn't do anything. We didn't violate. Those guys just stopped us and they took us to the police station. The DPO was now telling somebody, we were overhearing him. He said, these people are stupid. They said they didn't violate anything, but now they are in the police station. That they should go and get a road safety official to look at their vehicle very well. There must be something they must have violated. Is there a Nigerian that doesn't violate one thing or the other? Sorry, I don't know how related that is, but what I want you to know is that if you look well enough into a typical vehicle in Nigeria and you bring out all the things that road safety people check, there will always be something. Maybe a mud guard, maybe something somewhere, so let me come to your question. I'm not sure whether you are very sure that you have not plagiarized. So be very careful when you say, I'm very sure. Know this, plagiarism software are also software. They work by algorithm. They can also make mistakes. But what I would advise a researcher is, you are not writing for plagiarism's sake. Because I kind of see a style now, which I think inform this kind of question. People write, and they are now checking their writing right up against plagiarism every day, as if that is the knowledge. That is not knowledge. So please be careful. I'm not sure. I'm not a very good writer. Dr. Yola, Professor Bright, they are far ahead. And I think I see Dr. Tosin here. and Omishaki, but I'm not sure any of us or these people that I know, I'm not sure they consider plagiarism when they write. You don't need to consider it. If you do what is good, I've written a paper before. The person now came back and said, I tested for plagiarism or you passed. I said, I mean, I don't care. I mean, I don't think about it. Why? So please, the fundamental thing which I want to sound to you, the questioner, is that you are not writing for plagiarism tests. If you do what is right, it will definitely scale through any software mechanism. So get that first. So there are two things that I mentioned. Number one, plagiarism software themselves are not foolproof. We understand that. Two, your essence of writing as human factor, research-based thinking, ideas, uniqueness that are not even tested by plagiarism software. It's just looking for similarity in what you have against some other things that are documented somewhere. Maybe you are even copying from a project that is in Akungba, because you know it's not online. You now think plagiarism software should not catch you. But somebody else has also stolen the same material and published. So you are not writing for, so write what is good. Then the next thing is now that you have been caught by plagiarism, the software that you are plagiarizing, I don't want you to put that defense to say, I'm sure I've not plagiarized. It may be wrong, but I don't want you to think that way. I want you to think that there's something I'm not doing correctly. But that thing that you're not doing correctly, don't look at it as, now let me solve the problem of this, because some people, I've seen cases, the person will write, he will run it, he will see that, oh, it's 45%. He will go and change some area, he will run it again, I'm now 30. You are not measuring your PCV or what do they do, or BP in the hospital. Do a good job. It will pass any plagiarism software anywhere in the world. But more importantly, contribute to the body of knowledge. If the idea is coming from you, if you are able to synthesize the original review very well and you reference them very well, you probably will not be falling prey to plagiarism software. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open the floor to one or two persons that have raised up their hands. But before I do that, I still have one other question here. Somebody is asking, how can one build up theoretical framework for model specification? I will refer the person to our last month presentation was on theoretical review and theoretical framework. So if you visit the website, the material is already there. Theoretical review and theoretical framework. And let me just, so when you go through that work, you will see, you have a proper understanding. But let me just give you a background, is that one, we know that the two of them are different. And you also know that good theoretical review is what leads to a theoretical framework, okay? And you also need to know, because most times when people do theoretical framework, your theoretical framework in that presentation, we clearly stated there, must have a link with your concept. For instance, I'm doing FDI and growth. Okay, we expect that you should have reviewed theoretical review on growth. Growth, there are different growth theories from exogenous to endogenous growth theories and all of that. And some of them will now go ahead to talk about how international financing, where FDI falls in, come into play into the growth equation. So they are there. And most time when students come to me, I always tell them that if you have reviewed good journals from Science Direct, you have a proper, in fact, from other Science Direct, good journals from some places, no good writer will write without giving some theoretical, issues about what he wants to specify a model about. If you get them, except for all these, we normally call them Agbowo journals, where you just see them anywhere. And so some of those Agbowo journals, somebody just, writes something without having a proper theoretical discussion of what he wants to specify its model about. So when you have a good journal, that good journal would have referred to a theory or theoretical issues about its model. It might not present the theoretical framework, but it will refer to it in proper discussion, which you understand. It will summarize it. But what the person will quote or the person will reference to is, you can go and download that work. Probably that person is referencing somebody. We call it snowballing. in literature search. So that one lead you to another one until you get to the original theory or original issues. Read it yourself. And if you are interested in the one that want to present it like we present in our thesis, some mathematical equations that sometimes when we are asked, we can't even explain them. But the truth is that if you are presenting a theoretical framework, somebody should see the theoretical framework aligning around your dependent variable and explaining whether it's mathematics or anything, explaining your independent variable, which is the key concept of your extended variable, linking into how it affects the dependent variable. That's what the theoretical framework is all about. So if sometimes people just see somebody's model somewhere, and the most common one is the one that people use growth model. They'll just say AK model, or they call it a solo growth model. And they said they just modify it by putting a variable. And then they said that's a theoretical framework. That's not a theoretical framework. In fact, you are just adding a variable to a model that was already existing before. And that model by that person, you have changed that specification. Because the person who specified from a good journal, if it's a good journal, would have told you the theoretical issues leading to a specification. So if you now just put a variable without explaining how that can affect the synthesis of what that person has discussed and how your inclusion will come, the outcome of your inclusion, you have not done a theoretical framework. So please take note. But I will just refer you to that presentation that we did last week or last Wednesday on theoretical review and theoretical. For it is titled "The Integrity of Theoretical Framework and Theoretical Review and Theoretical Framework." You have a proper understanding on that. Okay. So I will just open up the floor for those who are raising up your hand. Please, can you just click your on top of your name and right click and change and let us have your name. I'll prefer to call you by your name, please, so that I can call us one by one. Okay. So I'll call on my friend Nosakari. Please, just unmute yourself, Dr. Nosakari, then you speak.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Rega. My question is, or it's not really a question, I just want to shed light on how we can have access to those top-rated journals that you have mentioned. Thank you. So,
okay. So you wanted to share it? You know, you are not in Africa, so you can give us a link. Okay, so that's what you wanted to say.
Most of them are not... Go ahead.
Okay, you wanted to say something? Yeah.
No, what I'm saying is that most of those journals you mentioned, they are not open access journals, so we are constrained in terms of having access to them. Can you shed some light on what to do, please?
Well, if you wanted to share some light on how to access them, normally our university should have access, normally. Let me give you some. I remember when I was doing my PhD, the sponsoring organization actually paid for my university to give us access, but I never saw it one day. The money was sent, but I never saw it one day. I don't know where it entered. So we can't see, I was recently in Abuja and I was speaking to somebody. We were talking about TED Fund. And he said TED Fund borrowed the federal government almost 50 billion or something for something that federal government is owing TED Fund. My question is that if TED Fund not federal government, what are the mandate of TED Fund? If TED Fund is now borrowing federal government almost 50 billion, it means that they have excess profit that they are not making use of. TED Fund, if they have that kind of money, then they should look out for how they can promote research. And this is one of the areas they can do that. Providing funds for university to have access to good journals. So every university should have. For instance, my university have access to, we pay for the access, okay, monthly, or we subscribe annually. Now, for those, remember when I was not having, I used to have friends I used to have a professor in Canada. I would just send him the journal, he would download and send to me. And I also have a friend probably in different places. So then some other persons also share their university's, password, then which I was using to access, but that is not right. Because, okay, it's not right. But later I stopped doing that. What I did was to send to a friend in somewhere who will help me to download. There's no way we will not have And that's why when you go to seminar, you go to conference, networking is very important. Network help you to meet people from different parts of the world. So that when you have that constraint, you can link them to help you to download a work. To end with this, that a good research actually starts from good journals. And I told somebody one time, I said, if you're talking about theoretical framework, visit more of JSTOR. JSTOR has very old journals that are more of theoretical issues, okay? And to have access to them lies in your university or your network of people that you have, which you can reach out to that can help you, okay? For me, I don't have a problem because anytime I want to access, I can link up with people that can download them for me. But that is where research starts from, please. A good research starts from there. I will advise that we'll take note of that. Okay. In fact, some of that journal, when you send papers to them, they look at your reference. Who are you referencing? If you have all these Agbowo journals, they can even throw it away without even reviewing it, okay? So let's take note of that. Okay, sure. I will ask Dr. Adegboye, is raising up his hand to unmute himself. Dr. Adegboye, just unmute yourself and speak.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I just wanted to respond to one of the questions that was asked about that somebody mentioned that they were sure they didn't copy anywhere, and then the plagiarism software is still indicated they plagiarized. Well, I just wanted to say that the issue about plagiarism is that you are expected to have read different or almost all aspects of your research before you go ahead to write, so that sometimes you actually think you are putting down a very new idea, but then you are actually writing what somebody has done, which unfortunately you had not read before you went ahead with your work. So in that case, you will find out that plagiarism tester may catch you as it were. So there's I think there's what is called unintentional plagiarism, something like that. You actually did go ahead to collect somebody's work and copy it, but then I expect it is your responsibility as a researcher to have known that something like this had been done, so that you give adequate credit to the person. Then on the issue of theoretical framework, I think even with our limited access, sometimes some of these top papers that give us an idea about theoretical review, theoretical framework are usually available free. We have free access, like journals by Solo and the rest. Those top groundbreaking seminar papers, I think JSTOR itself sometimes graciously make them available, I think because of their importance. So sometimes except the modern ones that build on the seminar work, some of these groundbreaking seminar work, I think JSTOR usually makes them accessible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I want to say something. I'll just give a background. I met somebody recently who said 2 professors were sacked from a university in Nigeria. I'm not going to mention the university. Why were they sacked? Because somebody wanted to become this is a professor that became a professor for a very long time. But somebody wanted to become a professor and they send his papers out. They find out that those papers, some of his papers were, they tested them for plagiarism and they saw plagiarism in them, and not just serious plagiarism issues. And so the person submitted his report. And those who already become professor before this one that want to become professor were part of the people that know a younger guy, anytime he writes, he includes his or gas into his writing. As they were including them, they didn't know that there was plagiarism. When he wanted to become professor, the papers were sent to somebody who now tested for plagiarism. The external examiner tested for and submitted the report. And because of that report, those who have even become professors before were also sacked. This is one thing that guys, when somebody sends me a paper that says, I've written it, and then it will say, put your name. I don't put my name. If I don't contribute, I will never put my name. I will never. That is why I don't have too many papers, and I'm not ready to get too many papers by putting names here and there. But at the same time, I ensure that I contribute to that writing, before I can say that, hey, put my name. Some people have sent me papers and say, please, I've finished, please. I will say, I will read the work and I'll give you comments. Go ahead and do the comment and publish for yourself. I mustn't put my name because you never can tell in the future, the paper you have put your name. Somebody wants to become something, and then it then, become the reason why you are now being affected. Plagiarism is a serious issue. And so let's take note as we do collaboration or add names in papers here and there. Please, let's take it as a serious issue. I am sure that I've become professor for some time, wouldn't have known that will happen. But because a younger guy, in this part of the world, we do dobale by putting people's name to say, I'm looking for favor. And doing that, those guys can put you in trouble. Undergraduate, postgraduate students, these are guys that are still learning. Even early researchers that are learning. And I also recently, somebody, it's a lecturer, put my name in a work. And I tested it for plagiarism. It was almost 70% and above. In fact, in the first place, I told him that don't put my name, remove my name. He sent it for publication, but later I said, let me help this guy. Let me test. When I tested, it was above 70%. Imagine that I have already asked him to remove my name, but before I later asked, let me help him. And now send him a mail, please, this is what, I even called him, I said, this is what I saw. Even though you have submitted that you have not put my name, but please, can you withdraw that paper? Tell them that it has been accepted somewhere. Okay? so that you won't put yourself in trouble in the future, because that happen. I know that when we are starting afresh, some of my early papers will also have that, okay? But as you go on, try to ensure that read, study, not review. Read, study. And we cannot be having at this level, you can, even primary school students will read and understand things. We cannot read at this level, read and read and read, consult more papers about something, and will not have proper understanding. A good understanding helps you to write down. I did a paper with somebody in Cape Town. The guy said, after I was through, I sent him introduction, literature review, and empirical review. And I said, okay, you get the data and do analysis. He said he tested for plagiarism. I didn't see anything. I said that. He said he was wondering how I was able to write that. I said, when I write my paper these days, I read and write that. I always have a note for every paper, any research I want to do. I have a note. I read it, I write down one after the other the literature. What I understand, I will write it in my language down. Then I will now come back and type what I have read, what I've put down in my writing, and intertwine the issues. That's the way I write now. So reading and studying is the reason why you do literature, is the reason why you do research. If that is your guiding, it will help. And I think Dr. Onyola also said that thinking is research. Do you understand? So first thing is to read and think and understand the issues. Very, 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 very important. And it will help us a lot. Please. I don't know whether it's Dr. Badmos. Jamiu Badmos. Can you unmute yourself and talk, sir? Jamiu Badmos, are you there? Your hand is up. Unmute yourself. If you cannot, there is somebody with Efinix Hot 5.
Hello.
Okay,
Hello.
You can go ahead. Yeah. We are hearing you. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, I actually want to talk about what one doctor said about getting access to journal.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe we can get access to journal when we have the DOI of the journal. There is one lady that created a website called Sky-Off. So whenever you get the DOI of the journal, you can actually go.
Dr. Jamiu, Economics does not promote that kind of a thing. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Because that is a fraud. So you can know it by yourself. And hello, are you listening to me, sir? That website that you said somebody created that they are putting DOI, I would advise that tell people personally, not on a general platform like this. Economics does not support, because that website is actually doing the wrong thing, but in Africa it's helping us. So Economics will not promote that website on this platform. But if anybody one-on-one speak to you, you can go ahead and tell them, okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So let's do the right thing. Economics want us to do the right thing. And so we promote the right thing. There is nothing in this world that we cannot get. Get your network right, because you are a researcher. Your networks, get them right. There are so many universities. As a researcher, you should have link with people outside. And then you can have access to whatever thing you want to have. You can use those, leverage on that, and that will also help us, please. Thank you. If you need odd 5, unmute yourself and talk. If you need odd 5, can you unmute yourself and talk? Okay, in the absence of none, I don't think anybody raised up their hand again. Because if you need odd 5, I have unmuted you, you need to just unmute yourself. In the absence of none, and our time is also fast spent, I want to appreciate the number of people that have attended this meeting. Your presence means so much to us. Like we said, by next month, first Wednesday next month, we are going to have a section on how do you identify gap and contribute to knowledge. It's a full presentation. And then in December, we're going to have how do you write a grant winning proposal. We're going to bring one leading professor who has been director of research in some other leading places outside of the country. So please, we advise that you book your calendar for that. The first Wednesday of November, the first Wednesday of December, we're going to have those sessions. One on contribution to knowledge and gap, and the other one is on grant winning proposals. Okay, so I want to appreciate every one of you on this. Please visit the website. We're going to have all our materials are there. Click when you get to the website, you see economics. Click on economics. You see economic teachings. Click on economic teachings. You now see download. Any one of them you want to download on any of the topics you can. And then we have a YouTube channel called Economics NG. Okay, all videos as we conclude, we upload them on the website. I've not been able to upload the last one because I've been very busy, but I will upload this one, last one, and this one. Okay, just be visiting. I subscribe to you. When they are uploaded, you just receive notification. And I also advise that please try to register on the website so that you can get direct notification. Okay, it's, time or their researchers, they want to have with them or how to write proposal, whatever thing, just private day, making different presentation of different. It's not to take the place of your supervisor, but it's also to have good interaction. And so please, if you want your university to do that for us, have the contact with us, organize it, and then we'll be here. Zoom is there for us so that it can be a whole day discussion with your PhD student or their topic or whatever thing they are doing. We can even interact with us, but it's just an interaction. In fact, one of the things we're trying to do is to also have what we call student supervisors relationship. It's also very, very important. It's also very important. So please, we have so many things that will come up going forward. But once again, I thank you. I have on this here, I know I saw Professor Dauda.
Professor Rega?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think someone wanted to know what the website is.
Okay.
So yes. So
I'll type it.
Okay. Yeah.
I think I've typed the website and everything. I just sent something. Sorry, I'm coming. Okay, so I want to appreciate our presenter today, Dr. Abimbola Oyinlola. We want to thank you for what you have shared with us today.
Thank you.
I want to always tell people that when somebody presents a thing like this, you cannot know it by the presentation alone. Go back and study the presentation. But they said in Africa, if you want to hide something from somebody, they say put it in writing. We won't go and look at it. But that is also to tell us that literature reviews start from what he has presented, and you can take it off by making research on almost everything that he has written on that slide to know more. So we thank you so much, sir, for your presentation. We also want to thank Dr. Misakin, will I say my elder brother or my bros, for the opening remarks and for your contribution. Dr. Falabi will thank you. Dr. Deni, we thank you so much. Dr. Kilishi, I don't know whether he's here. We also thank you, and everyone that is in this meeting. I thank you. I saw so many professors. Professor Dauda, we thank you. Professor Lega, we thank you. Professor Swaibu, so many professors were on this platform, and we thank all of you, and so many doctors, and so many people that are here. You know, we thank all of you. Please, let's keep engaging ourselves. The website, the email contact is there. Please contact us, and let's continue to engage ourselves. We are also learning. As you are asking questions, we are also learning. Nobody is an island of knowledge. We want Africa to be a better place, and specifically Nigeria researchers to be better ones in the field of economics, finance, and business admin. And that's why we're taking upon ourselves to provide this engagement. God bless all of you. See you by next month, first Wednesday. Okay, tell others. And we are also, please, I want to say that we are sorry for last time where we have just 100 people, because I don't know what happened. The setting could not allow. I don't know what happened, that the setting was just limiting people, just 100 people. We actually have more than 500 people that can attend this meeting, you know, paid for. But the setting was wrong. So I have to go and look at the settings and then do the setting again, so that we can have more than 100 to as many that we want to have on this meeting. Thank you once again for your presence. Inform others about what we are doing. Invite them to what we are doing. And let's have a thorough time to engage ourselves. God bless you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.